Welcome to Pink Radio with Prestige. This is the place for you, the diva boss entrepreneur who needs quick tips on building your crave-worthy brand. This is your host, Nicole Doss, CEO of the Prestige Society, a membership organization for women entrepreneurs who believe in building powerful networks while slanging in their industries. So I want you to go ahead and grab your favorite cup of coffee and get your favorite tips right here with Prestige. Hey, girl bosses. Welcome to another episode of Pink Radio with Prestige. So, listen, I know that in the past we have spent some time talking about some current events as it pertains to those who are building businesses. We even have given you some really great episodes on just giving you some inspiration. But now we're going to move into just really talking about some business basics. Why? Because 2020 is the year where the girl boss is really focusing on being unapologetic with building her business. I am really passionate about our campaign, hashtag Close the Gap, especially because of the fact that it is absolutely, to me, it's really a shame when you start seeing the numbers and you realize that, women of color account for 44% of women or all of the entrepreneurs out there. So if women own businesses, really it's African American women who actually represent 44% of the women owned businesses. But yet we're like the lowest on the totem pole when it comes to earning. And so although African Americans are the lowest on the totem pole, I would say then it would be our Latina sisters. And what's really sad is that when you look at the earning potential per year, or the average of revenue earned per year per firm, our Black and brown female founders are really on the low end of that particular price point or earning point, where our non-minority sisters are really thriving well. And so it's not to throw shade to those who are not of, minority descent, but it's to say let's close the gap. And the way that we close the gap is to ensure that women of color who are business owners, one, shift their mindset and no longer look at their business as a side hustle. Two, really also focusing on the fact that there are certain resources or certain tools you just aren't accustomed to because these aren't conversations that you're having. So if you're not having the conversations with your friends, if you're not having these conversations amongst your own network, if you're not part of the Prestige Society's network, then guess what? We're going to have it here on Pink Radio with Prestige so that you are wiser and you're able to build businesses that are thriving. So we're going to just jump right into it. Today's topic is about how do you create a business canvas. So this topic I chose because, as you know, the Prestige Society has a multitude of events I feel like going on at once. So right now, and people always ask me like, what event am I having? And not for nothing, I'm really big on substance, and because I've thrown events in the past, to me, events are like this one-time thing that happens. And I feel like that's not where change happens. Change happens in the ongoing, continuous impact or a touch point that you have with an individual, where they're able to take these lessons learned and apply them to their business over a period of time. So because of that, I love focusing my time more on the masterminds, the Prestige Society as a sisterhood, as the network, and the cohorts that we have on an ongoing basis. So that's really where I spend most of my time, and that's really where I am when people are like, well, why don't you really have events? Because I'm over here. Like, we're over here building businesses and actually teaching people. And so that's what my focus is on. So in that, in case you guys aren't part of the Prestige Society and you don't know or you're not aware, we literally have two cohorts going on, our masterminds going on at this time. So the first one is our D-Free Academy, which is all about how do we build our personal finances, because we want to focus on that first and build that as the foundation before we go into understanding the financial aspect of crowdfunding, and VCF. And then the other cohort that we're doing right now is our part of our Onboarding XP, which stands for Onboarding Experience. And that is all our initiative to help new members really get acclimated to the Prestige Society by putting them in the Boss Academy incubator for 8 weeks and then doing the accelerator for an additional 8 weeks. The incubator focuses on taking your idea from idea to fruition and launching the brand, where the accelerator focuses on generating revenue with the brand. So with that, this is our third week for our Boss Academy, and what we talked about was Small Business 101. And we really started talking about, do you need to create a business plan, or do you need to create a business canvas? And really, what are the factors that help you determine whether or not you need to pick a particular model? So in this case, we'll talk about business canvas, but in this case, if you focus on business canvas, really you focus on it because you really aren't in a space with your business where you need outside money. So maybe you're not in a space where you need a loan. Maybe you're in a space where you aren't trying to do any kind of getting investors or things of that nature. So if that's the case, then you still need to create a business model so you understand the structure of your business. So ask me why. Like, why can't you just get to doing the work? Easy. A number of reasons. One, I'll start with like the biggest reason, and then I'll go like to the smaller reason. So the biggest reason would be when people start their businesses, they love to charge what they think their value is. And since you can't see me, that value is, the quote, my hand quotes. So the value usually means that you're comparing your business to peer brands. Maybe they have been in business longer than you, maybe have done the work longer than you have, but when you see that your competitors are charging X amount of dollars, then you in turn feel that your value is the X amount of dollars. You're not taking into consideration the amount of time that you've been in the industry, your knowledge, your skill set, the fact that your business is not a well-oiled machine yet. You just want the money because you're chasing the coins for whatever reason. So, and once again, I hate to sound harsh, but I figured in 2020, I just don't want to sugarcoat anything anymore. I just want to be honest. And I equate those babes in business, meaning like, babies, the ones that just, start off their business. I equate you guys to like entry-level positions. So although you're like a brand, so if anyone out there is in HR, you know that whenever someone comes on board, there's a mid, and a max when it comes to salaries. And you usually base where people fall on that salary range based off of the education they have, the years of experience they have. There's a number of things. Like, everybody just doesn't jump into a position getting the same amount of money, because there's different experiences or skill sets that they bring to the table that determine where they fall in that salary range. It's the same thing, y'all, when you start your business. If you're a brand new baby life coach, you can't charge the same amount of money as Lisa Nichols. Why? Because you haven't perfected your craft yet. And unfortunately, they don't really teach you that, because I went to coaching school and they teach you right off the bat. You charge $400 a month for your gifts. They don't tell you to take anything else into accountability. And when you learn this and you have no other knowledge around how things work in business, you believe that ideology or that philosophy, and then you get upset because you aren't seeing any kind of, I would say, real return on your business and on your company. So when we talk about a business canvas, it helps you see structure in your business. And it's important because when I started doing, I don't know why. Oh, I do know why. So I want to say years ago, I could hear people say that they were interested in becoming these luxe brands. And people wanted to really upgrade their clientele. This is how we got on this tangent in the first place. Oh, you guys know that I go on those tangents. But anywho, um, so we all go into this space of, they want to upgrade their clientele. How do I get clients that are really willing at this point, now that I've gotten these clients to pay X amount of dollars, how do I get clients to grow with me now that I've grown? And I was really interested in knowing what the psychology was, or the consumer behavior was, of a luxury client, of a luxury consumer. And so I was really, it's funny because I tried to recently look it up again. I couldn't find it, but I remember years ago being completely astonished that there was an institute that was geared towards helping brands understand how luxury brands function and what the consumer behavior is for those who buy consumer brands. And when you get to the real basic piece of it, that is actually a simple, it was three simple things. The one thing was excellence in customer service. So when you think about luxury brands, let's say, or not even customer service, we'll say customer experience. So let's say if you go into a Louis Vuitton store, or if you go into a really nice, that's what we'll do. I'll do hair salons. So if you go into a really nice posh hair salon versus if you go into your neighborhood hair salon that is not so high end, there's going to be a difference in your client experience. Why? Because I have frequented both. So I'm aware of what those experiences are like. So my hairdresser now, I would consider a high-end hair salon. And just to give her a little shameless plug, that is Omni Tresses. It is actually located on Westfield Avenue in Pennsauken, New Jersey. The owner of the salon is named Sierra Desper. You can find her at Sierra Desper on Instagram, as well as on Omni Tresses Salon on Instagram. No, she did not pay me for that plug, but I figured why not? Because she's also a member, so why not give her that plug? But here's the thing. When I went to Sierra, I initially went because she wanted me to come and do an observation. She was not looking to make me her client. I was already a client of another hairdresser and frequenting that particular salon. If anyone knows me, you know I get my hair done every 2 weeks. I don't do my own hair. It's too thick. Even when it's short, it's too thick. I can't handle it on my own. So I go and get my hair done. After experiencing Sierra's salon, I was willing to pay more money and drive further just because the client experience was bar none. And when I think about her as a luxury brand in comparison to what I read about luxury brands, she covers the whole basis. So excellence in customer experience. Then it also has to be streamlined processes. So what does that mean? That means from end to end, the experience for the client must be flawless. And if it's flawless, then you'll realize that they'll always come back because it's a very smooth experience every time. Now, what if there is an issue? Well, it's all in how the brand deals with the issue that determines whether or not you keep your clients in this particular case, when you're talking about high-end luxury brands. So I will say, usually at this point, they will do anything and everything to make sure that you are happy. They'll make sure that you are, because they want to make sure that you keep spending those big bucks with them. I think I've only had one issue at Sierra's salon, and that was a super simple mistake. And guess what? She was like, "Oh, you're not paying for this visit because you were inconvenienced." And I couldn't believe it. I was like, "What?" So I just tipped her the amount of the service because I was so thankful that she was even willing to do that I didn't even want to exploit the situation. I wanted to thank her for it. So She rolled her eyes at the tip. And so, but, I felt like, that's what happens when you have, like, when you're able to upgrade your clientele and you do these things. So I want you to think about it, guys. How many of you have this end-to-end process that is completely streamlined and easy for your clients? And if the answer is no, and every time you are dealing with your clients, you're kind of rethinking the process, you're kind of just, operating at the seat of your pants, all of those things are things that impact whether or not a client will buy with you again. And if you don't have memberships set up where they're automatically buying with you again, that means that the amount of time and the amount of effort that it's going to take for you to get them to purchase from you again, it's going to be super hard. Okay. So for those of you that have boutiques, if you find that, you are, trying to post different products and you find that, at one point in time you really had a lot of people buying from you and now they're not. Yes, it could be simple as just bad timing, but also look to see what your level of service was like during your peak season. And if you had impacted production times, if it took you a long time to get things out to your customer, if people had to email you to ask you where their products were, these are all things that will show you that you don't have a fine oil machine or a really well run end-to-end process. And so what you'll notice is that if that's the case, then people won't trust you and they'll just purchase from other people again. Elaine Johnson is really great at this. So I think the most lag time any of her customers get is when they are in pre-order mode. And that's because her planners are coming from China. So, with our horrible relationships that we have with China, I hate to say us, but the president has created such a barrier between ourselves and China, then your stuff could sit at customs for a really long time. So when it comes to like the beginning part of it, she already knows up front that production and customs and all of that's going to take some time. So the pre-ordering time may be a little painful for clients, but after that, once she has inventory, she says all the time that her biggest competitor is Amazon. So she has to make sure that she's getting her planners out immediately because she doesn't want to allow for long lag times, because ultimately someone can just go on Amazon and buy a planner from Amazon and get it in 2 days. So that's who she's seeing as her competitor. So ask yourself, what are your processes like? So remember the two things we talked about, right? So process and it's your customer or client experience. So if you suck so far in those two areas, guys, I won't say the word suck. I'll say if you're lacking in those two areas and you can use some improvement, then I really want you to think about, why you need a business canvas. If you are really confused so here's the deal. The other part of it is really understanding how the brand speaks to the actual psychology of your targeted demographic. So think about it from this perspective. Most big luxury brands, most brands period, if they're doing really well, have an idea of who they want their target audience to be. Now, we have lived through some times where we've seen some name brands, I won't call them luxury brands, I'll just say name brands, say really harsh things about African Americans because that's not who they really had in mind when they came to being their targeted demographic. Timberland boots being one, Tommy Hilfiger being another. So when you are really, really getting to the point where you are a well-defined brand, then you're in a space where you truly understand who you are creating your product or your services for. So why am I talking to you guys about this as if you don't have these things figured out? because I sat on a call with women where we went through this cohort, and it's a web, it's web conferencing call, which means I can see their faces. So when I would ask questions as we went through each segment for the business canvas, they really couldn't define it. And their face was like, eh. So that let me know that like they really did not think these things through. Now, the good thing is that part of their homework is actually identifying these things. And so now they're getting more of a clearer picture of what their business is, who their brand is serving. But prior to that, they were not thinking about this. So what does that do? It impacts who are you creating your messaging for? You'll find yourselves putting out messaging or marketing campaigns that cast this very wide net to reach everyone. And you'll find that your message can't reach everyone. So although your intention may be, I want to be able to serve everyone, you'll find that when you start looking at your business intelligence, which is your business data, you'll find that in actuality, you're really only targeting a certain specific group. And so that is in the data, it'll tell you who your target demographic really is. Now, if you find you have really, really poor conversion rates, it's because the people who are attracted to your brand may feel like the messaging is not really for them. So then they're not going to buy. So when you don't understand all these different pieces, if you haven't taken the time to really understand all these different pieces, you're literally missing out. You're leaving money on the table. You're not reaching the people you're supposed to reach. And from a purposepreneur standpoint, you're blocking the blessings of those with whom you're supposed to bless because you're not even giving yourself an opportunity to really place yourself as an option or as a resource for your tribe. So there's a whole bunch you're missing out on when you aren't looking at your business from this lens. So I've talked to you enough about the why. I've talked to you enough about what you should be thinking about. And honestly, as I'm speaking, hopefully there's certain things about your business that you're realizing that you haven't really taken the time to analyze. So what we're going to do next is we're going to talk about what the business canvas is, and we're going to jump right into what the actual segments are. So a business canvas is a series of 9 segments, and these particular segments break down how your business operates, how your business communicates with its intended target market, and it also identifies all of the important relationships that help the business thrive. Okay, so with that, we're going to jump into it. Now, when you first see the illustration, and I'll add the link to the actual site where you can see the business canvas, and you can print it and you can go ahead and write your own. There's also a book that is called The Business Canvas. That's a really easy read. I would suggest that anyone who's out there to read it. But with this, what you look at is that it starts on one side, so you would just naturally think that you need to follow the flow from left to right, but that's not how the flow works. So I'm going to give you the flows by name so you know where to start if you are in fact ready to fill out your own business canvas. The first thing you're going to do is really look at your customer segment. This really defines who is your customer. Now, I always go back to this woman by the name of Tiffany who is now on Scary Mommy. She has her own show, but she also used to be on The Girlfriend Intervention on Lifetime, and I had the awesome opportunity of having her as a participant in my social media bootcamp class many years ago when I was a really awesome person at social media and I just swore I had this social media thing on lock. And then algorithms changed and just really humbled me and let me know, Nicole, you no longer have this social media thing on lock. So I no longer teach social media bootcamp. But at that time, I did. And what we were talking about is really identifying who your targeted audience is. And what's so interesting about this particular participant I had by the name of Tiffany at the time was that I asked everyone, like, who's your target audience? And I can't remember the name she used, so I'm just going to give you any name. So she was like, oh, my targeted audience is Marcy. And I was just like, not really what I had in mind. I'm looking for more things like not a person, but, dynamics or elements or different kind of profile makeups or characteristics that make up who this person is. And she was like, yeah, that's what I mean. I've given this profile a name. Her name is Marcy. And I remember thinking how brilliant that was. Because now, whenever she creates any kind of communication, she's creating her communication for Marcy. When she's thinking about services or products that she needed to create, she's creating it for Marcy. And the cool thing about it was, and Marcy wasn't the name, Marcy's just going to be the name we use. But the cool thing is that when she explained who Marcy was, Marcy made a certain kind of range in salary. She felt she had a certain attitude towards the fashion industry. She viewed fashion in a very particular way. It was perfect. It was absolutely perfect because she literally hit on every single element that I usually ask my clients or my participants to think about when they are creating a profile for their customer. So the fact that she made it a name, it was genius because it makes it so much easier to create that marketing profile. So when you think about a customer segment, I want you guys to think about a profile. How do you create that customer profile so that way you are able to really get clear as far as who you are providing a service for, so that those other pieces that we're going to talk about in your business canvas, those things are clear as to how you're supposed to craft these things and how you're supposed to distribute this information. So that'll make more sense when we talk about the other segments. So segment number 2 is your value proposition. Listen here, ladies. I tell my clients, my members, all the time, there's 6,742 versions of the Prestige Society. There are 6,472 versions of event planners out there, probably even more. There's 1 million coaches. There's 1 billion hairstylists. There's 1 trillion makeup artists. But there is something about your niche. There's something about the very thing that you are focusing on that that makes you just unique, that brings value to whoever it is that's going to be defined in your customer segment. And this is something that's really hard for new female founders to grasp, especially if they are really anxious and ambitious to make a buck. So if you are so focused on how do I make $1, you really truly believe that you have to cast the net to everyone. And I'll give you a perfect example. So I have a really awesome, wonderful, beautiful spirit client that is focused on building a women's empowerment company. And I always tell her, when I hear someone say, I want to build a women's empowerment company, I tend to roll my eyes. And not because I don't believe in women's empowerment. I just believe that it is such a huge industry that when you only allow yourself, or you only can define yourself under the realm of women empowerment, you aren't doing the due diligence to really identify who you are serving. So I tried to push her a little bit in really getting some clear definition around what does women empowerment mean to you? And one of the aspects of her business is around giving resources and support to women who have been traumatized by domestic violence. And so her thing is, well, it's to focus on domestic violence, but really it's about reaching out to all women in all walks of life. But what she doesn't realize is that naturally, whatever she's going to focus on, it's going to veer towards something that is going to be very specific. And what may happen, and I'm not saying this has happened, but what may happen is that her messaging when she speaks may be directed to how to deal with brokenness, how to deal with being with a survivor. When she's doing certain messaging on her social media, it may be around giving someone some kind of inspirational quote that may help them. Maybe it'll be a scripture that will help someone that seems to be down or broken. So that natural veering to that niche is really where she should focus, but there's something in her that's telling herself that she's missing it if she focuses on all. So what will happen is that if you do an event that's for all, but your messaging tends to veer towards naturally what God wants you to focus on, what ends up happening is that you'll lose out on that huge big market you're looking for. But who you will capture will be those who are intended for you. Where you lose all the way is if you don't even mention that demographic, let's say around domestic violence, because you're so focused on women empowerment that your messaging won't appeal to women empowerment. And then those who are dealing with domestic violence may feel like then it's not a safe haven or a safe place for them or an event that is for them. So that's why you got to be very, very careful as to when you're deciding on what your value proposition is going to be. Because in order for you to identify what value you're bringing, you have to be very clear as to define who you're serving. I go back to, and look, I'm about to change the girl's name from Marcy to Mandy. I go back to the example of Tiffany saying that her target demographics name or her ideal client's name is Marcy, because she was able to really understand and get absolutely clear as to who she was providing the service to. So in this instance, what she could say is, well, because I understand Marcy's attitude towards my industry, because I understand how she feels. I mean, this girl went down to how she feels when she walks down the street. I will never forget this. This was, I want to say, like 4 years ago. Was it 4 years ago? It was when I just wrote Rock Your Life. So imagine this girl says that when she walks down the street, the streets of New York City or the sidewalks of New York City is her runway. I mean, that is very specific. So automatically for me, I get who this girl is. I get who she's targeting. So she's not targeting the woman who needs to feel comfortable in her skin, because the woman who feels like every sidewalk in New York City is her runway already feels comfortable in her skin. So what she puts out there is going to be very different, because it's going to speak to this particular demographic, this profile. So I would even probably go as far as suggesting that you even create some kind of category or name for your profile, because if this is something where you're not really used to identifying marketing analysis and understanding your audience, then guess what? Going to be really hard for you to figure out then how do you write communications for them. But giving it a name makes it 10 times easier. Once again, now if we take Tiffany as an example, who understands that Marcy is the name of her customer segment, which was the first block you would look at, when she goes to her...
I couldn't hear what you said.
You hear Siri? Listen, y'all, if y'all could just see me, I'm moving my arms about. Somehow I targeted Siri on my Apple Watch, and she decided to join in the conversation. So I apologize. But nonetheless, because Tiffany was able to clearly define her customer segment by giving that customer segment a name, she now can say, these are the things that Marcy finds relevant or of value when looking for services like mine. And so this is what Marcy's missing in the industry. This is what Marcy wishes was around in the industry. And so what I provide bridges the gap. It fills the void. So this is my value proposition. If I were to take the Prestige Society as an example, I would say that people in my industry that are like me are event focused. So everything that they do is around the events that they're throwing. They're having this conference, they're having this workshop, they're having this webinar. So all these things around events. For me, and let me tell you what happens. What happens is then the audience would say, oh, well, if there isn't a lot of events, then what is the Prestige Society doing? But that's not who is in my target demographic. My target demographic is the person who has had enough. They have spent so much money going to conferences, workshops, events where they're tired of the fluff. They're tired of the glitz. They're tired of the glam. They want to work. They want to be able to put in the work necessary for them to win. They're interested in really applying lessons learned to their business. Elaine always calls me the professor for the girl boss, and that's because I too am ever a student in business, in life, in religion. Like I just, for my faith, everything. Like I constantly read, I'm constantly looking up information and data points. I don't just go to people's conferences. I literally take courses. Like I took entrepreneurship courses with Wharton's Business School. If you don't know what Wharton Business School is, it is the business school to the Ivy League University of Pennsylvania. I mean, I believe in always expanding my knowledge, constantly reading what trend reports are saying, really understanding what is going on. What's the deficit that we're feeling as women of color, girl bosses? Why is it that we are grinding and hustling, but only very few are really winning for real, for real? And I want to be honest and open and transparent about it. So for me, my value proposition is the fact that I really give women tangible tools in order for them to be able to build their businesses. And so that's my value proposition, the end result that they see, the learning that they get, the fact that we have members that retain membership for 5 years. It's our goal to double that. In 2020, we want to grow with women. We want them to be past the 5-year mark, but then we have to make sure that we have services and that we have the perceived value for a girl boss that is past the 5-year mark. So I really want you guys to think about, what is your value proposition? But once again, you cannot do that if you are not aware of who you are truly serving as your targeted demographic. So when you talk about your customer segment, I'm going to give you some key things you should answer. Where the person lives, how much money do they make, what is the age range? If you're doing, they're 10 to like 50, I'm letting you know you're going to fail. Make it real. If you need to know who's looking at you and you want to know things like gender, location, age, please use your insights on your Instagram business profile. Go to audience. And so go to insights, then go to audience, and it will tell you that information. And then you'll see, pick the 2 largest bars, like that give you that are like the closest. If you just see one protruding bar, then use that one. But if you see 2 that are kind of running neck to neck, use the range of both of those bars to identify who your target demographic is for your customer segment. Figure out, where do they go to get products or services that look like you? How much do they normally pay for products or services that look like you? And what is it that they're lacking? What is it that they're just not getting from your peers in your industry? So once you can answer those things, I think the last one really will speak to the value proposition, because your business should be filling that void of what's missing, and it's not. You should be thinking about that under the key activities, and we'll talk about that next or soon. But for the most part, those other questions will really help you in identifying your customer segment and then answering your value proposition. All right. So the third thing you're going to look at is going to be your revenue streams. So with that, identify all the different ways that you make money. So for me, I would say memberships are like the number one way that we make money at the Prestige Society. So that is the most stable, so sustainable and the most it's repeatable. So every month, like clockwork, money is taken out for membership dues. So for me, that is like the most reliable and our biggest. It probably has like the most percentage on a pie chart for our revenue streams. The next would be our apparel. And that's just, branded merchandise that supports the Prestige Society brand, meaning supports the messaging, the philosophy, the ideology, all the stuff that goes with the vision and mission, and the core values of our brand. Whew, y'all, I'm losing my voice teaching today, huh? Sorry about that. So with that, think about your different revenue streams. So we have memberships, we have apparel, then comes my publications. So that's books, and that's also our books and our planners. So right now we have about 4 different planners that we have out now. So we have our classic, our executive, our social media, and then our 2020 edition. So we have that, and then our 2 books are Rock Your Life and Tribe. So we have revenue streams for our books and our planners, and then we have our one-off. So my ad hoc or my a la carte, which would be coaching services. So those are all. Oh, how did I forget? And then we have things like our podcast. So listeners like you just listening helps me with the monetization of the podcast. So that's really great as well. So those are different things that I can add from my revenue stream. So I want you to think about all the different ways that you are able to really create your revenue streams. We know that it takes 7 different revenue streams in order for you to be financially independent, but just start mapping out all the different revenue streams that you have, but then look at some that you could create if you find that you only have about 1 or 2. So on Monday's call with our Boss Academy cohort, I have a young lady who has a boutique, but she is the person that creates all of the items. So she makes everything from she just loves making things beautiful. So she used to be a makeup artist, but now what she does is makes rhinestone bling kind of t-shirts. She makes beautiful custom stemless wine glasses, planners, journals, you name it, she makes it. Okay. So because of this, I was saying, like, when we were looking at her revenue streams, I said, the relationship is very transactional, but not for nothing. You have access to the inventory because you're responsible for making these things. So you have the ability to create a tribe through ALC, which is another shameless plug. That's the name of her company. Which will allow people to get a bling box. And what if their bling box every month, if they paid a certain amount, they get a special bling gift just from you. And the cool thing is you have access to all this stuff in your house already that you can make, that you can give to people who sign up for membership. And she was like, oh my goodness, I didn't even think about that. So even if it's not considered a revenue stream now, at least mark something as that you could think of that could add to your revenue stream as well. All right, so revenue stream is pretty straightforward. The next one is going to be channels of communication. So when you talk about channels, think about all the different ways that you talk to your customers, your internal customers, your external customers, those who are already in your customer base that are your people you've worked with already versus those who are potential customers and clients that you need to be able to contact and reach out to. So think about the ways that you do it. Now, here's the thing. Old-fashioned timetable or old-fashioned saying in communications used to be 7 different times, 7 different ways. The problem with that is that with the way that algorithms fit today, you either need to do more because of the fact that people's timelines are just inundated with ads already, or you need to make it very, very specific and pointed because if not, and meaning if you aren't posting at the right time, if you aren't posting the thing that excites your followers to get them engaged, there's going to be a chance that your post doesn't even make it onto their timeline. Okay? So really think about how you do things like lives, how you utilize things like Instagram and Facebook stories. Think about how you utilize things like YouTube, a YouTube channel for your brand, or an IGTV story for your brand. Think about how you utilize things like podcasts or email marketing. These are all different ways that you can really get involved with reaching out to your particular tribe. So really think about that when it comes to your communication channels of communication. The next thing you have to do is your customer relationships. For me, this is really how you maintain customer relationships. There's people who are what we call lurkers, and lurkers are people who love your brand, like your brand, and they're just looking. They're just looking, and they're looking to buy one day, but like haven't bought just yet. But they're looking. Let me tell you who I'm a lurker of. I'm a lurker of DC Marshall. If no one knows of Dr. DC Marshall, please go follow her now. I love DC Marshall. I always say that when I grow up, I'm going to be just like D. I think that she is the most inspirational, warm, educated, talented, gifted, anointed. I mean, the list could go on. Woman that I have ever encountered. And I don't know her like personally. We're friends. I can call her on the phone. I would say we're more of acquaintances. But like when I tell you I have so much respect for this woman, and her clients really are executives. Like not like directors, but like executives who hold, I would say, VP up to C-suite level. So like your girl can't really afford her because her price points are to meet those who are executive price points. And the way my salary is set up, it is not on the C-suite level. So, I respectfully appreciate a lot of the things that Dee does. Like she does a Deo challenge, and she does all these things that are either like in group settings that are free or somewhat easy to like for people like me to be able to buy into, but it's always like, oh, like just another thing, but like I need it, but do I need it? Is it for me? It is for me. So I'm a lurker of D Marshalls. So I only share that with you because you guys are all lurkers of someone too. You may be lurkers of the Prestige Society. You may really enjoy listening to the podcast, seeing the lives, seeing the posts, and feeling like at some point you might need more, but you are trying to figure out if it's in your budget, trying to figure out if you can afford just this other thing that you have to pay for. So I get it. But because there are lurkers, you need to know who your lurkers are. And 9 times out of 10, your lurkers are people who give you love for your podcast. So I always make sure that I stay in touch, right? I thank them. I let them know that I see the posts and that I appreciate them. People who reach out to me who, may interact with me through DMs and asking certain questions because of a relationship that we had before. I just make sure I cultivate that relationship because at some point in time, they're going to need my services and I want them to know that I'm here for it. If I get ghost, what happens? Then they'll just use the next person that's all in their feed. So cultivating those relationships is very important, as well as cultivating the relationships of my current members. So those who are current clients of mine, current members, it's really important that each member feels that they have a personal connection with me because that's the only way that I'm able to build brand loyalty. I pour into their brand so they know I'm a full supporter of them, but then also letting them know that, because I'm here for them, they have a sense of loyalty to me as well. I have some real ride or diers for the Prestige Society that I can tell you I am very thankful for. And those are the kind of people that you want as your clients, as your customers. They're the ones that when they have to cut back on bills, they're not thinking about whether or not they need to cut what they're paying you because they see the value in it. Back to value proposition, right? And so these are the things that you really need to take into consideration when you talk about your customer relationships. So that's number 5. Number 6 are your key activities. Now here's the thing. If you are blessed with lots of talents, you, my love, are going to believe that you can do anything and everything under the sun. I am here not to be your dream killer. I am here to just be your realist. I am not telling you that you cannot do all that your heart desires. But what I am going to tell you is that everything has a season, everything has its time. I used to be a dance teacher for a competitive dance school, and I've danced since I was 3. I competed nationally since the age of 6. I literally stopped teaching dance when I had Taylor. So just 5 years ago. So I'm 40. So I stopped at 35. Right? What's really interesting about that is that you figure I've danced for 32 years of my life, and I'm only 40. So the years that I haven't danced are less than the years that I have danced in my life. With that, like I was on the dance team at Rutgers. We danced competitively at Rutgers. Like I have danced my whole entire life. When I wanted to open a business, I remember when I was in my 20s and I was like dating this guy and he was like, oh, we like talked about the future. His idea for me starting a business was opening a dance school for me. And I didn't necessarily get excited about that. I didn't necessarily want to run a dance school. But I remember him saying like, oh, we're going to open a dance, like I'm going to open a dance school for you. And I was like, okay, like not really what I want to do. So all of our talents don't necessarily equate to the thing we have to do with our business. Really focus on what your God idea is and allow that to flourish. I love to teach. I love to help connect the dots, either mentally with things that you're learning or with people. And that's really where I find my happy place. And that sums up what the Prestige Society really is. So I want you to really think about your key activities, because what you'll find is that if you're super, super talented and you start listing your activities, you'll find that you got mad activities all over the place. And you have to ask yourself, when you write these activities down, are they rolling up under the umbrella of your value proposition? Remember, your value proposition is the piece that fills the void for your customer segment. So we're going to go back to Marcy. So if Marcy says that she has an issue and you are the business that's creating the solution for her, what in your activities are helping her with that problem? What of your key activities are allowing you to create the solution for the problem Marcy has? So let's talk about, I'll say, Rent the Runway. So let's say Marcy makes, let's say Marcy's salary point is supposed to be anywhere from $60,000 to $100,000 a year. Now, for those of you who have never made $100,000 a year, that probably sounds like a lot, but I'm gonna tell you right now, it's not. So, and I hate to say that, but it's just, it's not. Like, people who make $100,000 a year can still be broke from check to check if they don't budget well. How do I know? Because ding, 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 I'm there. Like, it happens. So if you don't budget, that's why we're doing the D-Free Mastermind. If you don't budget, you will be broke from check to check, which means people who make $100,000 that have kids that are paying for daycare and getting ready to pay for college tuitions and paying mortgages, they don't have time to rent or buy, these dresses for events that they're always being invited to. So if I'm going to this gala and this event for this cause and this inauguration and this and that and other, I do not have the money to buy all of these dresses that I'm only going to wear once. And don't get it twisted with your celebrities, because your celebrities aren't even buying those dresses. Those dresses are being not even gifted. Some outfits are gifted by designers, but for the most part, they're just wearing it for that event, and then they have to give it back to the designer. Just like the jewels they are wearing are rented or loaned to the person to wear. They have to say the name of the jeweler, the name of the designer they're wearing, because it's not theirs. They gotta give it back. They can't rip it. They gotta give it back, right? So with that, unfortunately, common folk get completely duped and think that they have to buy stuff for every event. But Rent the Runway said, listen, Marcy's having a problem, because Marcy thinks that the sidewalks of New York City are the runway, but she does not have the funds to look flawless in all these events. So what we're going to do is we are going to go and help her rent the dress for the time she needs it, and she can give it back. And renting it will be so much more cost effective than if she were to buy it herself. They were able to create the solution. That is the value proposition, providing a cost effective way for people to look absolutely fabulous when they're going to events. Boom. Okay, great. Now, knowing that this is the solution, what do you think are the key activities that Rent the Runway should do? Should they go and do a marathon for MS? No. Should they create a planner? Probably not. Should they start a podcast? Maybe they could for looks for less, but maybe not. So maybe trending looks, and then they can tell them like where they can find it on their site. Okay, that could work. Should that be their main activity? Should that be the key activity? No. What should their key activity be? Oh, partnering with designers to getting access to the clothes so they have an expansive inventory, so that Marcy, who is fashion forward, has a great choice option to look through when she needs to find the dress for the event. Yes, that should be one of the key activities. Oh, okay, wonderful. You see what I mean? So really understanding who your customer is, what your value proposition is, should allow you to really hone in on what those key activities are. Next, what you need to do is create your key partners. So we're going to just stick with Rent the Runway. So if they don't have a partnership with designers, then they're going to have a number of problems. One, the amount of inventory is going to be a little bad, right? It's going to equate to the options we used to have in streaming for Netflix. I don't know if you guys remember when Netflix went from mailing you DVDs to actually going to streaming. You had far less options in streaming. It was like horrible. I it was just a bad look. So I used to never want to look at Netflix because I knew that I wasn't going to like the options that I had. Well, Marcy can't have that because she's fashion fabulous, right? So like Tiffany said, the sidewalks of New York City are her runway, or is her runway. So, you got to figure, if she loves fashion, she needs to be able to have options, because she needs to like what she's looking at. So with this, guys, there needs to be a partnership, because there needs to be a partnership with designers to give their end user at Rent the Runway enough options so that they're good, so that it can enjoy coming back to the site to look at what they can get and what they can wear. Another piece is price point. So if you don't have a great partnership with these designers and you're going to be buying, that means you're buying them from the store. You're literally going somewhere with money you may have raised through fundraising campaigns or money that you saved from your 9-to-5, and you're going to get you maybe 2 or 3 dresses. So now you have 2 or 3 dresses. Marcy is like, what am I doing with 2 or 3 dresses? Not to mention in what size, because whoever's looking at your website are going to be made of all different sizes. And if you're buying it at cost, that means that the renting has to be pretty steep too, just so that you can make your money back. So these are the things you have to think about, because if your price model is completely skewed and if you don't have the key partnerships, you're going to be completely jacked up when you are in the space of focusing on what you're able to provide as a solution to your customers. So start mapping out who your key partners are and start creating those relationships or cultivating those relationships. So key partners is 8, and then 9 is your cost structure. And I love how all of these things, when you look at it kind of backwards, all kind of feed into one another, because the cost structure goes into what I just said, right? If you do not have the right partnerships that allow you to get things at a certain price, you're literally pushing off that horrible price structure right off onto your customer. If your cost of operations is extremely expensive, then you're just going to literally push all of that off on the customer. And so therefore the cost of doing business is going to soon translate into the price of your services, and the customer may feel like it's too astronomical. They may not decide to buy with you. And I know it gets real tricky because there's a lot of mixed messaging out there in the real world. I literally saw someone put on their Instagram story a post that one of, I guess like a really well-known publicist put out there, and he was trying to tell publicists like, don't feel afraid to like ask for money. And he showed a screenshot of Tiffany and Company, and Tiffany and Company has two, it was like 2 paperclip bookmarks, and one was 18 karat gold and it was $1,500, and another one was, I guess, like sterling silver, and it was probably like, I'm going to say maybe $700, and basically saying like people will pay for blah, 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 blah. I didn't even read it all. I kind of just was like, but that's somewhat like Tiffany and Company is not, it may not be for the targeted demographic with whom you're here to reach. If it is, then you will charge a certain price point, because to them it's like chump change. But if your target demographic does not see $1,500 as being chump change, if it's like equivalent to their rent or their mortgage, then they're not going to just so easily buy from you. So you really do have to take some consideration into, what is the cost of business? If, and once again, because social media is creating a narrative saying that unless you make this money, you're not winning the game. The reality is there goes a lot into creating that cost structure. And so, do you have an office? Are you paying for salaries? Are you doing things effectively where the price isn't so inflated that it's actually comparable to the peers that are in your industry as well? So these are all things you have to think about when it comes to cost structure. Think about how, even look at your margin. Forget what you're making a year. Let's talk about your margin, meaning if your operating expenses are way more than your revenue, then your margin's going to actually be in the red, meaning that it's negative. What you're looking for is for something to be in the black. You want to make a profit. So these are the things that I want you guys to think about. So I hope that as we talk about all of these different things, you are now in this space where you are able to say, wow, I never thought about my business in this light. I never took the time to map these things out. This is something that is foundational to you building your business. So with that, I'm going to head off. I did not mean to hold you guys captive here for a whole hour and some change, but I hope that this is information that is going to allow you to really progress this year in your business. So with that, have an awesome, wonderful day. Bye.